Did you just have a spiritual awakening and you're not too sure what to do next? Well, in today's episode of the Silicon Valley to Spirituality show, I will be going over the top common experiences that people have when they have a spiritual awakening and what they should do as a next step. All right, let's jump into the podcast. Okay, so here is a email from Sarah in Austin, Texas. And Sarah writes, "Hey, I don't know if I'm going crazy or if this is normal, but ever since I started meditating and diving into my spiritual journey, I feel like I don't relate to my old friends anymore. Conversations feel shallow and I just feel disconnected. Is this normal? Will I ever find my tribe?" So the question is, why do I feel so isolated after my spiritual awakening? And this is pretty common. When you have a spiritual awakening, like for myself, I didn't have my awakening until I was 43 years old. So at 43, I went from being an atheist to someone that prioritized spiritual connection in my life. So of course, when I made the switch, most of my friends that knew me as someone that followed the scientific process, that really liked looking at evidence, that liked to really understand things from the atomic unit level. And all of a sudden, I'm talking about frequencies, vibrations, non-duality. Of course, so many of my friends thought that I was going crazy or that I joined a cult or something like that. So is this normal? Yes, it is normal. And here is the thing, okay? If you think about how you were before you started meditating or you dove deep into your spiritual journey, how open were you to these concepts when people would talk about channeling, mediumship, things of that nature? Probably you didn't really align with it and you weren't too open to it. And this is what is so important about this, is that when it comes to levels of consciousness, you have to realize that depending on what level of consciousness you're at, if you're higher than someone, then they're just not going to be able to understand what you are talking about. Just like a elementary school student doesn't know what it's like to be in high school, and a high school student doesn't really understand what it's like to be in college. People that are at lower levels of consciousness or people that haven't had a spiritual awakening, of course, they are not going to be able to resonate with what you are talking about because it is beyond what they are able to comprehend. So as they say, your vibe attracts your tribe. So instead of just trying to convince your existing set of friends, relatives that they should believe the same things that you believe, just go find a new tribe, all right? As they say, when your vibe attracts your tribe, be in a authentic state, be as normal, as natural, as true to yourself as you can be. Talk about the things that are interesting to you, like spiritual expansion, astral traveling, remote viewing, channeling, things of that nature, and you will start to attract more people. Maybe not your old friends, but more people into your life that could totally relate with you, that will make you feel less isolated, that will make you feel like you're actually doing the right thing. Because if you're anything like me, I know that when I first started telling my friends this, they weren't like super supportive of it. If anything, they were trying to convince me to look at something different. Okay. All right. So that is number one. Now I got an email from Marcus in Seattle, Washington. Let's read that email. Okay. So Marcus writes, "Lately, I feel like I don't enjoy the same things I used to. TV shows, social media, even certain foods. It's like my interests are shifting and I don't recognize myself anymore. Is this normal? Am I supposed to just let go of my old life?" So the question really here, if you distill it down, is why do my interests, habits, and even relationships change after a spiritual awakening? So this is a very, very good question because I've come into this situation many times in my life. And it's not just about spiritual awakenings. It's anytime you have a paradigm shift, okay? Maybe when you go from high school to college, or from college to the workforce, or when you get married, or when you finally have a family, you'll start noticing that a lot of the things that used to make you excited, a lot of the things that used to make you happy, well, these things no longer make you happy or no longer excite you. And why is this? Well, it's because I want to share with you a framework called spiral dynamics. And Spiral dynamics is a model for the 8 stages of consciousness that someone goes through as they go through their life and expand their awareness and their consciousness. Okay. And not everyone makes it through all 8 levels. Most people only get through level 5. But the idea behind spiral dynamics is every time you get to the end of one level and you start the next stage of consciousness, you go through something that they call the transformational dilemma, which is you either keep doing the same things that you used to do and hope that it'll make you happy. Like, okay, I need to start a second business, or I got to earn even more money and I'll finally be happy. Or you decide that it's time to transcend and go to the next stage of consciousness where you leave behind your old ways, your old habits, maybe even your old friends, and you pursue this new paradigm shift. And so when you go through the transformational dilemma, when you start off this new stage of consciousness, it's going to feel really uncomfortable because your previous stage where you were in the groove, where you were in the flow, where things seemed to be so easy until you got to the point where your hobbies or the things that you were doing no longer pleased you, it's that it is because your core values shift. And when your core values shift in life, then it's up to you to shift your life, to shift your hobbies, to shift the things that you do so that they are in alignment with your new core values. So yes, your hobbies, your interests, your relationships will change after your spiritual awakening. But a way that you could think about this is instead of changing and taking away from something in your life, think about it this way, that you're letting go of something so that you can make new room for something even better. Okay? So that is the second email that I got. All right. So let's take a look here. All right. So I got this voice message from Lisa in Denver. And in this voice message, it writes, I thought I had healed from my past, but ever since I started my spiritual journey, old memories, emotions, and even childhood wounds are resurfacing. Is this part of the process? How do I deal with this without getting stuck in it? Okay. So if I were to summarize this question, it is to say, why is past trauma coming up during my spiritual awakening and how do I heal it? Well, if you just think about the etymology of the word spiritual awakening, is that you are awakening spiritually, right? So when you awaken to something, you kind of wake up to this new information. And I think that most people think, oh, when I have a spiritual awakening, this means that I am getting closer to alignment, or not alignment, closer to enlightenment. So why am I focusing on old memories, old childhood wounds, old emotions? Well, that's the thing, is that when you have a spiritual awakening, you wake up. You wake up to the things that you were ignoring. You wake up to the things that you were sleeping on. So for example, a lot of people have a lot of shadows, all right? And you have to do shadow work. So if you haven't done the shadow work and you've been avoiding your shadows, well, having a spiritual awakening will make you very, very aware of all the shadows that you've been sleeping on, or all the shadows that you've been ignoring, or all the shadows that you have been suppressing, right? So waking up, it is quite beneficial, especially when you wake up to all the beautiful things that life has to offer. But when you're waking up to all the trauma, all the darkness, all the emotional distress that you have been burying for weeks, months, years, or even decades, well, it could feel very overwhelming. And this is why it's so important to understand that many people in the spiritual community will call this the dark night of the soul. All right. And the dark night of the soul is when you become aware of all the things that you've been suppressing, and it is time for you to finally deal with it. And so there is a saying in coaching called what you resist persists, or it goes, what you resist will persist. And so all this old trauma resurfacing during your spiritual awakening, this is part of that. All right. And the good news is when you face these traumas, when you face these shadows head on, you don't just work through them. You don't just start feeling better. These things actually start becoming your superpowers. All right. So everything that you have gone through that have given you a negative memory, a negative emotion, some trauma that always seems to resurface. Well, the reason why you have experienced this on a soul level, from a soul's planning level, is that it gives you the evolutionary tension to work through things so that you could continue to expand. All right. So I really love this question from Lisa in Denver. All right. So here's the next question that I got. And this is an email from Tom in London. All right. So it goes, lately, I feel like I'm just floating through life. Conversations feel weird. Work feels meaningless. And I don't even know what's real anymore. Is this part of the awakening process, or am I losing touch with reality? So the question is, why do I feel disconnected from reality during my spiritual awakening? All right. So most people, when you spiritually awaken, as I said earlier in one of the other questions, you become more aware of just everything that is going on. Not just all the positive things, but all the negative things too. Because positive, negative, everything, everywhere, all at once, all of this exists simultaneously. So now you're starting to feel a little bit disconnected from reality. Things feel meaningless, and a lot of times when I think about spirituality, religion, or science, this is the framework that I came up with. Too much science, too much logic, too much rationality could lead to intellectual burnout. Too much religion could lead to dogmatic beliefs, and too much spirituality could just lead to delusions, So, for example, when people learn about that there is only one thing, consciousness, and that we all come from the same consciousness, for me, it felt very freeing. It felt like it was great news that allowed me to play life like a video game. And I know some other people that when they came to the conclusion, or when they learned that everything is just one thing, consciousness, it made them feel nihilistic. It made them feel like there was no meaning to life. It made them feel like, well, what am I doing any of this for if this is just a simulation, if we just live infinite lives, if I'm actually thinking I'm talking to someone else, but that someone else is actually me because we're all from the same source energy. Yeah, that could definitely happen during these spiritual awakenings. And this is just the beginning of the journey. Okay. If understanding that we are all one was the end of the journey, then almost all of us could be enlightened, right? But enlightenment takes time. And what I have found is just like martial arts, you go from white belt, yellow belt, green belt, blue belt, purple belt, red belt, brown belt to black belt. Like spirituality is similar. There are many levels to it. Now, if you find yourself feeling nihilistic, if you find yourself feeling disconnected from reality, well, this is a good time to spend some time back in reality. Okay. Like many people that get into meditation or spirituality want to practice channeling, astral projection, remote viewing, a lot of things that take them away from this 3D reality that we're currently living in. So this is a good chance to get reconnected with 3D reality, because the whole point of spirituality isn't for us to want to get to the 5D or to realize we're a starseed and that we're too dense for this planet, or that we want to live in some sort of future where there is some future utopia and there's less suffering. No, spirituality is actually the main purpose, at least in my experience, is to teach us how to be present, how to enjoy ourselves in the here and now, and not put off our happiness for something to happen, not to make our joy, happiness, and purpose conditional on some sort of event, but to realize that we could access that feeling every single moment of any day is something that we can truly do, and really appreciate the joy, the purpose, and fulfillment of understanding that all of this, while we may refer to it as a simulation, is that all of these experiences are real. So how do we take these spiritual learnings, integrate them so that instead of feeling disconnected from reality, we feel totally connected to reality? All right. So those were some of the questions and DMs that I got from you guys this week. I want to know, what did you guys think about this format? Did you find this to be interesting? Did you find this to be helpful? Drop the comments in the comment section below. Tag a friend that needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll be back next week with another episode of the Silicon Valley to Spirituality Show. Take care, everyone.